Today I'll be doing my myofascial lines project. The first one I'll be going over is the superficial back line, and that runs just from the bottom of the foot and up on the posterior side of the leg, the gastrocnemius, and then up the hamstring, up into the pelvis, and then it keeps going up the back on the posterior side, and then up through over the skull and to the brow. The postural function for the back line is to keep the body up in upright extension and prevent it from going over into flexion or the fetal position. And the movement function would be extension and hyperextension. And an exercise you can do to stretch the superficial back line would be just to go like this and then reach down as far as you can to stretch all those muscles. The superficial front line runs from the top of your foot, and then it comes up to your pelvis, and then from the bottom of your rectus abdominis runs up and then connects to the sides of the skull. The postural function for the front functional line, superficial front line, is to balance the superficial back line and also to provide tensile support from the top to lift the rib cage, the pubis, and the face. The movement function would be flexion of the trunk, and then flexion of the hip, and also dorsiflexion of the foot, and then extension of the knee, and also for the superficial back line, it also acts in flexion of the knee. So an exercise you can do to stretch the superficial front line would be to just go down on your belly and then just stretch it like this. And then a progression you can do for that would be to just on your belly, grab your legs, and then just stretch like this. Also, and it's a progression because you have a lower base of support. For lateral flexion, the lateral line, it connects from the side of the foot and then runs up the lateral side of the thigh and along the trunk under the rib cage and under the shoulder, and then connects to the skull right behind the ears. The movement or the postural function for the lateral line is to balance the left and the right sides, and to also stabilize the trunk and the legs when imbalanced. The movement function for the lateral line would be lateral flexion, hip abduction, and also eversion of the foot. And a stretch you can do for the lateral line would just be lateral flexions like this. And a progression for that would be to bring your feet close together, providing a smaller base of support, and then just okay. And then next is the spiral line, and that runs from the upper back and it wraps around the rib cage to the pelvis, and then from there runs down the anterolateral side of the thigh and then down the shins, and then it comes back around the foot, under the foot, and then runs up the posterolateral side of the thigh to the ischium and then into the erector spinae. The postural function for the spiral line is just to maintain balance across all planes, and also to steady the trunk and the legs to prevent rotational collapse. And then the movement function is just to provide rotations in the body, and then also to steady the trunk and the legs during eccentric and isometric contraction. A movement you can do for this power line stretch you can do is just laying down like this, having your knee up, and then just stretching like this. Now, as for the front and the back functional lines, it's unique because it isn't used during posture like the other ones, but it is used during athletic activity. So, for example, if I were to throw a baseball, right now my front functional line is being stretched in order to contract the back functional line, and as the ball is being thrown, the front functional line is now contracted and the back functional line is being stretched. So they work to counterbalance each other, but they complement each other at the same time in order to perform those movements.